Adrienne Drobnies is a Vancouver poet and scientist. Her debut poetry collection, Salt and Ashes, was released in 2019 from Signature Editions. It won the Fred Kerner Book Award and was longlisted for the Fred Cogswell Award for Excellence in Poetry. One of her poems was selected for this year's BC Poetry in Transit. Her poetry has appeared in literary magazines in Canada, the US, and UK. Her poem Randonnée won the Gwendolyn McEwen Award for Best Suite of Poems by an Emerging Poet and was a finalist for the CBC Literary Award.
I'm going to start with a focus on dream poems. And for me, one of the interesting things about dreams is that everything seems ordinary until it's not. So the first poem is called Dream Poem. A woman and I are walking up a hill. We've been climbing that hill for 30 years. During this time, our children have grown and learned to evade us. I tell her I care about her. She does not say what is true. She does not care about me. The only reason she travels up this hill with me is we're neighbors who share a dislike of our husbands. We reach the top, look out over a plain of palms and pines and ibises tall as trees. This second poem is not a dream poem. It's a poem about grief and the death of my husband, and and I'm going to read some poems subsequent to that deal with that in this context. So it's called Obad. Impossible not to think of the first dawn without you and the reluctance of your leaving. There is a time in August when the year turns and whispers of coolness in the morning. The height of the bed was higher than anything I had ever climbed before I heaved my body across yours. I washed and oiled each limb, the torso, the delicate parts, the hands and feet. The coolness of your forehead matched the air. There was no wind sighing in the stillness. How could it be you were there and not there? And this next poem is another dream poem, and I have since remarried. I've been married 3 times now, very briefly when I was quite young, and then to my late husband. And so this is a dream I had before I married my current husband. It's called Dream Wedding. I stand here in raw silk, not the first time, not the first dress. 30 years ago, Toronto in March, synthetic chiffon shifting against 26-year-old body. 8 years later in San Francisco, again, silk cream brought back from China, tiny green and brown triangles, frog closures at the neck, slits up the side, different dress, different body, girl fetus attending. My husband alive, blown about under a golden bridge, I totter on high heels. He wears a bow tie, says each of us made our offering to the wedding gods. The pregnancy wanted for so long almost makes him believe in God, he says. Almost, a sweet jest, not quite. Another wedding, girl child, now a woman. Look in the mirror, nails broken and ragged. Hair undone, smeared makeup, muddy shoes, broken strap. Music starts. Is it time? Who goes first? Friend, daughter? I stagger down the aisle. Everyone stands. Forgive me. I miss you. What else can I say? I do. In front of the huppah, another man with a witty remark for the crowd. We swing dance to Ain't She Sweet? I look again, my dead husband. And this next poem is kind of more of a waking dream and kind of coming to terms with the death of my husband and remarriage. It's called In My Version of Heaven. Alain is lying on one side of me and John on the other, and on each side of them are their earlier wives and lovers, and theirs next to them, and there is no jealousy where we lie with the scattered detritus of a child's colorful Band-Aid, torn corners of potato chip wrappers, discarded Tosca flyers. But the day is mild, and we laugh all together at those low moans we made in pleasure or pain, and how little it all means now. And I'm going to read a couple of newer poems. I don't know if Evelyn is going to read a poem of hers in her book that I really like about real estate. But this one is called Dream House. I often dream about houses, but I don't often dream about renovations, unless unfortunately I have to be in the middle of them, but that hasn't been for a while. But this was a dream about a renovation. We finished the renovation, and a spectacular bathroom it was, as big as a living room right off the bedroom. There was a sauna and shower with every kind of spray and nozzle. It was all marble and glass and shiny silver stainless and heated towels. I thought it would be a good idea to build a swimming pool on the floor above with a fountain spraying fragrant nasturtiums on the surface. You obliged almost overnight, it seemed, and went off to work in the fields of jade. Then I noticed water was streaming down into the bathroom. Not a problem, really, I thought, just a bit damp, but I should tell you. You were wearing a suit and looking sad. Off to teach, you said, can't talk now. Oh, I've ruined your life, I feared, and hugged you fiercely. I went back into the bath, found a door to another room that, turning the handle, opened onto a warm, inviting space with a fire burning, into my wakening and your still present absence. This is also a poem about my late husband. It's kind of an occasional poem too. Today is Ash Wednesday. It's called Rituals. Pancakes every Saturday. My daughter's delight was to be allowed to crack the egg into the bowl. We liked the story he told about growing up in Lyon, making crepes every Mardi Gras and putting one on top of the kitchen cabinet to rest there for the whole year. He wrote the recipe out in pencil with an illustration for each step. That's who she had for a father. Now the 2 pages are framed and hang in the kitchen. She gave them to me when Father's Day he and we could no longer celebrate. I refer to it every time I make a pancake and add a shot of cognac to the batter for good measure. I'm going to read from the section of my book, the central section, which is randonnée. Randonnée are walks. It means walks in French. And this began when I was living in Grenoble, France, and during a time of a lot of turbulence in France. And I do find it's a useful experience to live in another culture for a time. The headings of the poems are either dans le quartier, in the neighborhood, or sur la montagne. So I'm just going to read the first and last, and then a couple of in between. Grenoble, dans le quartier, June. The place does not matter much, nor how I arrived, nor how I leave. Leaving, leaving, arriving. Among the stand of trees in midday domesticity and the well-practiced arts, I live in the quarter of chemists, Lavoisier, Gay-Lussac, Berthelot, who watched walnut oil turn rancid for 8 months and 10 days. As thunder rolls through the mountains, it is easy to settle here, not to move. Difficult to find a trajectory through the crowd. The given and the random are where I begin. 5, July. Prelude and postlude to washing the floor. Things that must be done. Rearranging mind and room. This is where Nerval now walks over the concrete bridge by Crédit Agricole. Too advanced, too close, below a hiving around a car. The post hastens to meet my approach, the trees aslant. 6, sur la montagne et dans le quartier, August. Not every place is abandoned. The elements remain, and I am here with one of them. Every outward place quickly becomes intimate and inward. Every inward place outward in the fast approaching landscape. Tales rob us of what we see, who we are. Shimmers hold on in the dimming light shot upward. Tales take each word for granted. My upper lip is a salt lick. My hand swipes the cool film around each breast. Fat hangs there like a butcher's display. I carry the unwilling sister who would not go far on her own. A hard-honed knowing tautens in thigh muscles. Hands tear at flowers. Teeth bite the dust. 12, dans le quartier. Calm, slow movements among the babies' cry. Soft cones drop. Clouds slip between stones. The swallow chatter trembles. Along the wall there is a thinning. No one here, alone in the hum of this small place I chose when it appeared large, an upward thrust of green needles. I lean out over the balcony and the sea is infinitely far. And the last section is sur la montagne et dans le quartier, Chamrus and Grenoble. My last day on this mountain, I am pursued by a shadow. I have risen above the clouds, away from that distant wall of rock and its habitations, my shelter for a few months. Nearly no one is here in this deserted resort, only a class of children almost the same age as mine, French and English students. At moments, everything separates, moves away from what I have imposed and reclaims its own. A solitary man intervenes in the sunset. We depart back to a country shaken by its self-made crisis. Now they quieten themselves before Noel, stunned and timid. The quarter is again just a tram stop, a cold place to rush past, a dark pyramid, a lighted circle. What I want receives me in a few small rooms. Okay. The next poems are what I decided to call the nightmare poems, although they are all too real. The first one is the first poem in the book, and it's about power and trauma and family dynamics. Witch Hazel Song. Red Rover, come over and show me the games you learned as a child. How to wield scissors with a vengeance, how to spank a cat, beat your brother's head against a wooden bench, how to be invisible and how not to be. A shoe hits a face, a slap stings. Crank up the wind inside you and wind it down. Red Rover, your burns heal slowly, and scorpions hide under blankets. The taste of soap in your mouth empties your insides. Vomit is mopped up with bleach. A wooden floor smacks the chin. Splinters are painfully pulled. Car doors slam. Show me how scars last on ring fingers. Ice burns as much as fire, and I don't know how she got those welts. Teach me the rules you learned as a child, and how a switch cut from witch hazel is a lesson in pain and power. These next two are about the experience I had of being a young woman in graduate school in chemistry department. This one is called The Devil, and it starts with a saying in Spanish, which I translate at the end, a well-known saying in Spanish. The devil, más sabe el diablo por viejo que por diablo. At 22, you mugged my life, arm around its neck, rifling gnarled hands through its pockets. Pancho Villa's men invaded the family home and killed your grandfather. I have paid for those robberies. Was I wrong to hold on to my life? You yanked it away and left it twisted with a limp on its right side. Love, family, career, I would reassemble these from pieces scattered on the ground. You taught me a valuable lesson. The devil knows more because he is old than because he is the devil. Looking back. The Canaanite plains are awash, the desiccated veins engorged. Sulphurous green ribbons in the Vermilion Hills, parched as a match, are once more seasonally quenched. Steam rises from a bloody mud. The law is ancient. To rid himself of a middle-aged wife and replace her with a younger, more vivid version, sentiment is set aside. The wife is a transparent memory with obsidian eyes at which he does not look or looks through when looking back. And I just have two more poems to read. From the last section of the book, where there are a number of poems that connect to, in some way, to my scientific background or life as a scientist. This first one is Singularity. I wandered into that abstract realm that held and would not release me. An arc tangent, the rainbow angle deflects and scatters light, reverberates in the atmosphere. There is a dark side to a rainbow as well as to the moon. A phase transition is a singularity in the complex plane. Water to ice, helix to coil, plus to minus. A spring running under the thin ice, a collapse of order or an initiation. A woman rising to compose herself over a cup of coffee when the night before she let fall each block of her body. A flip switch that occurs in the magnetic poles every 200,000 years, a shallow eutectic of energy. Thoughts do not follow a mathematical order. They climb their imaginary axis and take root illegally, joke with meaning, appear on the other side of the plane without permission. So recently, I stopped asking why you are not here anymore. And this last poem is Man on the Moon. As well as in the moon, I watched the televent in a suffocating Texas classroom while Neil Armstrong descended a ladder onto a shiny surface in a temperature-controlled suit, taking Earth's atmosphere with him. A rabbit in the moon, but not on the moon. Lucky to be sucked up into that brilliance, soft foot stroking the cheek of my childhood. Someone back in mission control in a super cool room squawked, MCC here. Buzz followed next, a real 50s name for a real 60s moment. Michael Collins stayed above in orbit, not to be captivated by rock and dust. Stolen silver brilliance again in your departure gone, shunting moonlight through a vein, day eating up night, beside me on the pillowed now.
You had a line that said, "The sea is infinitely far." And I'm a big film buff, and a lot of movies, specifically because you're in France, 400 Blows, the boy just wants to get to the ocean. And then at the end of the movie, I don't want to spoil it,
I've
but he
seen
gets,
it.
yeah, but he gets to the ocean. And it doesn't look like it satisfies him at the end with that freeze frame. And I'm wondering, when you said the sea is infinitely far, what were you thinking?
Well, just, I mean, I grew up in kind of a landlocked place in Texas, and I remember when it snowed when I was 5, actually, and I've been talking to people there who are suffering through this terrible weather right now. But uh, and my late husband also grew up in Lyon, also kind of a landlocked place. And in those days, people didn't travel as much. And when you started talking about the 400 Blows, I mean, that movie is just, Anton Douanel and my husband are kind of melded in a lot of ways in my mind. But he talks about, I remember when I first saw the sea and how, when I went to California and well, that wasn't really the first time. I'd seen the Atlantic first, but then I moved and lived on the ocean, and it's just always been so important to me. And I think people that do grow up around water, and it's just when you're not near it, you just feel it's so absent. You feel, and that that experience of that child in the movie you're talking about, having had such a difficult time and seeing the sea for the first time. And anyway, yeah, it's a very interesting connection you picked up on. Thank you for that question.
I wanted to ask another one. Sorry, I'm just looking and I'm not seeing other ones. Let me know if I'm missing someone, people, if I'm missing a question. But I wanted to go one poem I hadn't heard for a while. I can't remember the title, but you have Red Rover, Red Rover, Red Rover, we call this person over. And I remember playing that game a lot as a kid, and it's like, it's very much power dynamics. You either break through or you get knocked to the ground. And then, and I wanted to know, when you're writing those poems, a lot of the poems you've read were about possibly your late husband or maybe being in France. And what does writing poems, we don't need to get into the specifics unless you want to, what does that do for you as a poet, writing about things that are, uh, when things happen to an adult, you kind of give it, sometimes we give things a little bit of a pass, but when things happen to children, it's hard to give a pass to. And even when things happen within our own childhoods, we don't give a pass to our childhoods. We give passes when people slight us as adults, but not in the background. Tell me about the process of writing that poem.
Oh, well, I remember I was in the writer's studio, and Rachel Rose was my mentor, and she was kind of just kept pushing us to dig deeper and deeper. And so, we all have trauma. We all have our way of encountering that and integrating that. And I guess, I don't think about this when I'm writing it, but what, I hope is achieved is some connection between my experience and others. And I'm not writing as people who, write poetry understand. It doesn't mean everything I write, even in one poem or any set of poems, is strictly autobiographical, but it's about capturing a certain kind of traumatic experience, and also just what we are taught. You know, what we that, have to decide whether that's a lesson we want to carry on into our futures or not. And so it's a lot about making things conscious, I guess. That's what I'd say. Um, um, Having the capacity, if we're fortunate, to make choices. But yeah, um, there's a lot of there's always a lot of difficulty in our early experience. So.
Adrienne, thanks for the answer. I have one more question that an audience member, or maybe a few audience members asked, and then we'll answer this question. We'll see if there's any more, and then we'll have like a 5-minute break. So some people are asking the role. I really like the poem where you connected your science background with your words. And tell me about, or tell us about your connection with science when you're writing poetry. And I'm just getting into science now that I'm in my 40s. And there's so much to know. You know a lot. How do you not put all that in your poems? Or when do you know? I don't know. I don't know why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I think I understand. I mean, I'm often asked about the connection, and it's a complex one, and there's a lot to say, so I can't say everything I could, but it's always been a great source of wonder for me. Sometimes the two are very separate. Sometimes it's a great source of just generative energy. I was just thinking about, the poem in the open mic about recognizing climate change from so many years ago. And I mean, I remember the first time I heard about it was when I was getting these science kits of the month, and I was a child, and it talked about how this was possible. And then, I remember seeing Carl Sagan in the 70s saying, this is going to be a problem. And, somehow here we are, we're getting the message, but it's, it's just part of who I am. I think that's, most of my life has been spent in somehow engaged in scientific activity.